All right. Welcome back to Around the SEC. We go to David Waters from GatorsBreakdown.com, the podcast, as well as News4Jacksonville.com. David, this is kind of a hot way to go into this, but what are you looking forward to in this game that is kind of COVID related since we finally got through this?
Well, luckily we got some football, so that's the first thing I think. And we're kind of looking at Florida. Florida had a recent spike in COVID. What we've learned about the last couple of weeks, and kind of expected when students would start arriving on campus and stuff. And look, coaches, not just Dan Mullen, but coaches around the SEC and stuff, they're not really going to. I don't think we're going to hear too much specifics in names ahead of game time. I think, and I'm not even really sure how, in watching past games and the games that have already kicked off and stuff, of how in detail these programs want to get with that. If a guy's not playing, you can probably put two and two together. But there's all kind of laws and stuff out there about putting, with medical information, about putting people's names out there. So, we'll see who lines up for Florida. There's some guys who are, on a depth chart that was released on Monday. If that depth chart, was released and some guys are not playing and they were on that depth chart, then you could probably put two and two together that maybe something in that realm happened, because most of the time they'll announce suspensions, they'll announce injuries and all that. But if you don't get a lot of detail and a guy's not playing, then you could probably put it together that it's going to be some COVID-related, information behind the scenes.
Yes, absolutely. And Dan Mullen is notoriously stingy with health-related information anyway. And this COVID thing is just exasperated.
Yeah, dealing with that is a fun aspect when Mullen. So he knew on Monday when he was doing his game week press conference, that's the first thing he led with was injuries. So he knows the media is going to look for it. But yeah, his history plus COVID, you're not getting much out of him.
All right, let's talk about some players that we might not know. Everybody knows Kyle Pitts, Kyle Trask. Everybody knows about that. Who are some extra players that we need to look for this weekend?
Yeah, I think you got to go Florida's offensive line and the running backs. That's got to be the biggest improvement for this Gator team. If Florida wants to end up in Atlanta and go, beat Georgia, end up in Atlanta and challenge for a college football playoff spot, they're going to have to get that offensive line and that running game figured out. So we'll start with some running backs here. Malik Davis was a true freshman in 2017. Jim McElwain's last year was probably, if not the best, one of the best offensive players going back to 2017. He got injured in the Georgia game just past midseason and missed that, then got hurt again in 2018. And hasn't necessarily been able to trust himself getting injured so much. So he did play a whole lot, or he played in every game last season, but we didn't see that 2017 form. So I'm looking for Malik Davis to maybe regain that form from 2017. But let's not forget about Dameon Pierce, who was second, in carries behind LaMichael Pirine, who's now off to the NFL. So Dameon Pierce, Malik Davis, I think you look at those two guys at running back for Florida, and it's going to be so dependent on this offensive line and taking the big steps there. We were really looking at Ethan White. He was a true freshman last year, played a lot toward the end of the season. For him to be starting at center, well, he's injured, and he'll be out for a while with a knee injury. So, Brett Heggie will slide over from left guard to center there. But, one name, and the Ole Miss side may be a little more familiar with it, but Stuart Reese transferred from Mississippi State to Florida. I know you were kind of looking at a lesser name, but he is an offensive lineman. They don't get a whole lot of love, and him transferring from Florida or transferring to Florida from Mississippi State, where Dan Mullen and John Hivesy recruited him. That's a name that I think Ole Miss fans may be familiar with, but maybe have forgotten that either he'd be off to the NFL or something. But no, he's going to spend his last year with his brother at the University of Florida. So it's a big-time transfer from Florida where they needed help along the offensive line. So I think singling out Stuart Reese and those Florida running backs, I think, given everything and all the troubles they went through last year, that's what's going to carry Florida to the next step.
Okay, David Waters, Gators Breakdown podcast and News4Jacksonville.com, News4Jacks.com is here with us at the moment. Let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. I know they lost a couple of defensive linemen. How are they looking in that position, and who are some potential standouts on that side of the ball?
Yeah, looking at the pass rushers, kind of what you're looking for there. They lost Jonathan Gennard, who was a transfer from Louisville last year. Really came onto the scene, was the best defensive player for the Gators last year. Jabari Zuniga right up there in pass rushing skill as well. He was injured a bit last season, but when he was on the field, he was a big force for the Gators. So you're looking at Brenton Cox, who was a 5-star transfer from Georgia, didn't get to play last year. And he gets to play this year. Probably, he'll split time between the rush defensive end and that rush in position that they like to call the buck position. So look for Brenton Cox to really, all throughout camp, we have heard how much of a monster he is, kind of living up to that 5-star billing that he was as a recruit. So that's one player there you're looking at replacing the pass rushers from last year. And also Jeremiah Moon, redshirt senior for the Gators this year. He's going to split time also in that rush in buck position. Florida has a lot of versatility on this defense. So when you look at Brenton Cox, Jeremiah Moon, another player like Mamu Diabate, who got put as a linebacker on the depth chart, he can play buck. He can play defensive end if he needs to as well. So, those are 3 guys right there that they're really going to have to look toward to in replacing a lot. I mean, Florida had 49 sacks last year. They had 10 versus Miami in the opener, 8 versus Florida State to close the season, 18 sacks in just those 2 games, but 49 on the year. Look, Todd Grantham's going to find a pass rusher. That's just part of his defense. He's going to identify somebody. He's done it in his first 2 years at Florida. You're looking at 3 guys, I think, who can make an impact there. You're looking at Brenton Cox, Jeremiah Moon, and Mamu Diabate.
All right, David Waters, Gators Breakdown Podcast, news4jax.com. Okay, we're going to go a little bit of conference-wide at the moment. What are a couple of games that you are looking forward to in the SEC and why?
You mean for week 1 or just
week one? Week one.
Yeah. Tennessee, South Carolina. What team can take that next step? And I know Tennessee's thought to be the better team here. South Carolina, Will Muschamp's given that program a lot of trouble in recent years, and dating back to his time at Florida as well. And it's just kind of a statement game for, I think, both coaches. Can Will Muschamp kind of right the wrong from last year? I know they had a very tough schedule last year. Can they bounce back? Mike Bobo comes in as offensive coordinator to kind of fixing another Will Muschamp offense. I mean, how many times have we heard, they're changing coordinators and maybe this is the guy that fixes it all? But I'm really high on Mike Bobo, a lot of experience, of course, at Georgia in the SEC as well. So I do look for him to have some success, maybe not initially, career-wise at South Carolina, but I do think they'll get better under him if Will Muschamp's given the time there. And then other side, Jeremy Pruitt there and Jarrett Garantano. Can Garantano take that next step in making Tennessee maybe live up to some expectations they haven't had in quite a couple seasons there? So a few seasons since Butch Jones was fired. So that storyline of that game, just because of the coaches, I think, needing to take that next step. And then, of course, I think Kentucky-Auburn is the other kind of marquee game for the SEC this week. Kentucky, very tough, an offensive line that's going to go against a new-look Auburn defensive line in the trenches here. I think this is a really important game for Auburn, their new-look offensive line, their new-look defensive line going against the trenches of Kentucky that has a lot of experience and kind of used to playing that smash-mouth kind of football. So that's kind of – I know Auburn's favored, but I think I'm going Kentucky to upset Auburn this week just because I think there's a little bit more familiarity with their roster and where they're strong at. I think Auburn has a lot of questions at it right now. So I think those 2 games right there are probably the ones I'm pointing to the most besides the Florida game.
All right. David Waters, Gators Breakdown Podcast and news4jax.com. I really appreciate you stopping by, and hopefully we can do this again soon.
Absolutely.